savings.
Mr Chairman.
Honourable Peter Dunn.
Mr Chairman, that superficially plausible analysis from the member who's just resumed his seat actually doesn't stack up when you start to look at it. Let me just go through the arguments that he raised. Firstly, he said, reverse the tax cuts for the rich to pay for what is effectively being reclaimed through KiwiSaver to reduce the deficit. It sounds good on the surface, but it doesn't actually work in practice for this reason. The bulk of the tax cut package was delivered to those who were on the bottom two tax rates. So, in terms of the dollars spent, so that if his argument has credibility, that that money should not have been spent, then in fact the people who would bear the brunt of his policy being implemented were the very people he is seeking to protect, because in terms of income, they were the people who benefited most from that tax package in terms of the level of expenditure. He also overlooks the fact that the tax package was revenue neutral. It was funded by the GST increase. There was an element between the period from October 2010 till April this year that was covered by some very short-term borrowing, but fundamentally it is a revenue-neutral package. Now he then turns to KiwiSaver, and he talks about, I don't think he used the word destruction, but that was the clear implication of what he said. Let me just go through what the situation is prior to the passage of this bill and what it will be after the passage of this bill. As of today, right now, someone joining KiwiSaver joins on the basis of a 2+2 contribution rate, 2% from the employee, 2% from the employer. They qualify for a $1,000 kickstart for their saving. They qualify for a member tax credit of $1,040 on an annual basis. There will be no tax on the employer's contribution to that superannuation contribution. That's the status quo. The destruction that the member talks about sees the person who starts today still starting on 2+2, and when that was brought in as the default 2 years ago, the opposition claimed it was a cut because it should have stayed at 4+4. Well, we get the chance in 2013 when we go back to 3+3, and I don't think they're really opposed to that. So the person who starts today still starts on 2+2, still gets the $1,000 kickstart. That hasn't changed. The only thing that has changed to the impact of the saver is the change of $521 per annum in the member tax credit. Taken over the life of a KiwiSaver contribution, that has minimal impact on their savings. They still get the same benefit at the point that they get their payout in the age of 65. They also will be satisfied, I think, the fact that the employer is now paying tax, or will be now paying tax, on the contributions that they make. So, Mr Chairman, the point that I'm making in response to the case put forward by the member who's just resumed his seat, and he's normally someone who gives a considered analysis, and I respect him for that, it's factually incorrect for the reasons that I've stated. What the government is faced with, and I think the one point that everyone seems to agree on, is that running a deficit of this size in the unusual circumstances that we are is too high. We do need to bring it down. We need to look at what the Leader of the Opposition said yesterday were bold measures to bring the deficit down. That's what this budget seeks to do. We haven't heard any of the bold measures from the opposition other than raise taxes on the rich. But the point I make is that if you look at where the balance of the expenditure in the tax cut package last year went, if that was to be a bold measure, you'd actually be raising taxes on everyone, and that's not what the opposition seems to be arguing for. Mr Chairman, the KiwiSaver changes have a very small impact on the individual saver, but taken collectively, they do save us around $2.6 billion, which is a significant contribution to that deficit reduction. If you look at the changes for working for families, in fact the picture becomes an even more obscure one as far as the opposition position is concerned. The changes in the threshold take 4 years to implement, at the rate of $450 of income per year. The changes in the abatement rate in some cases will take as long as 8 years to implement, in most cases about 4. So these are very modest adjustments. There will still be the provision for the increase in the rate of payment according to the existing formula, and that will take place next to the 1st of April next year. But overall, what both these sets of changes do is secure these, Mr Chairman, secure these social policy initiatives for the future. And if I go back to the point that Jacinda Ardern made a little earlier, I can't remember if it was the previous part of the bill or this part of the bill, about her generation. This is really about her generation, because one of the great tragedies that we've had for so long in New Zealand is very short-term, selfish thinking. What these measures are designed to do is protect and enhance KiwiSaver long into the future, make sure that the basis of working for families remains and is beneficial to the families that need it, and the tax package which, if you like, lies behind all of that is ensuring a fairer and better system. And I come back to the point that I made in part 1 of the bill, Mr Chairman, that in a situation where 75% of New Zealand taxpayers, that's around 2 million people in this country, pay a top tax rate of just 17.5 cents in the dollar. That has got to be good. It's certainly the lowest tax rate paid by those households in anyone in this House's lifetime, and that's something we should be celebrating, not criticising.